I smoothed down my lavender blouse that morning, the fabric thin from years of careful washing, my fingers lingering on those tiny pearl buttons. I don't know why, but my hands trembled as I touched them, as though those little circles held the weight of my whole life. I remembered when Tobias was small, how his chubby toddler hands used to press each one as if they were magic coins. He'd sit in my lap, curled against me as I read stories, and his fingers would wander from button to button, fascinated by their smoothness. I never thought something so small could mean so much. But now, every time I touch them, I remember the boy he once was, the boy who saw wonder in the ordinary. I fastened my pearl earrings, the ones he gave me when he was 12. $25 he saved, mowing lawns, selling baseball cards, skipping sodas at the corner store. He handed me that little jewelry box with pride trembling through his entire body. I can still see him bouncing on his toes, waiting for me to open it, his eyes so bright with hope that he'd given me the best gift in the world. And he had. Those earrings were more than pearls. They were proof of his love, proof that I mattered. Standing before my mirror that Tuesday morning, I studied the woman staring back. The scarves wrapped around my head were bright, colorful, tied like armor, hiding what chemo had taken from me. My skin had grown pale, almost translucent, the weight loss making my clothes hang loose like they belonged to someone else. My body no longer felt like mine, but my eyes, they were still brown, still the same ones that had comforted my boy through thunderstorms, nightmares, heartbreaks. They were still mine, still his mother's eyes, and that had to mean something, didn't it? 32 years of sacrifice, of double shifts in the hospital cafeteria, scraping plates and mopping floors until my back ached. 32 years of choosing him over myself, of nights I went hungry so he could have seconds at dinner, of patching his jeans instead of buying new. 32 years of bending my life around his, making sure he never felt the poverty that shaped me. Surely that counted for something. Surely being his mother meant I still had a place in his life. At 2 o'clock sharp, the knock came. He'd promised he'd visit. But this wasn't the knock of the boy who used to tiptoe into my room, careful not to wake me from my nap. This was sharp, authoritative, impatient. The kind of knock that says time is money and you've already used too much of mine. My chest tightened, but I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the door, the smell of cookies and Earl Grey trailing me. I had prepared everything. His favorite chocolate chip cookies with that hint of vanilla he swore made them taste like childhood. Loose-leaf Earl Grey, not the bagged kind, brewed carefully in the porcelain pot with roses painted along the rim. The best china laid out, my mother's wedding gift to me. Fragile cups that I only ever used on Christmas or Easter. The house smelled of love, of anticipation, of the kind of Sunday afternoons we used to share. I opened the door, and there he was. Tobias, my son. Taller than I remembered, broader in the shoulders. His cologne hit me first, sharp and expensive, like something sold behind glass counters in a department store. His shirt was crisp, creased to perfection, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. He looked like a man who had money, who lived in a world far from mine. And yet when I looked at him, I didn't see my boy. Not right away. He didn't hug me, didn't even greet me properly. He walked past me, his eyes sweeping over the room as though appraising a property, not visiting his childhood home. He sat on the edge of the couch, perching like a bird ready to fly away at the first chance. My hands found my blouse again, smoothing and smoothing, my nervous tick since the diagnosis. The silence stretched, heavy, painful. It carried all the words we hadn't spoken in years, all the distance that had grown between us. Finally, he looked at me. "Mom," he said, and his voice was clipped, formal. "I think it's better if you don't come to the wedding." Just like that. No softening, no explanation, as if he were delivering weather or stock prices. The room tilted. I gripped the counter to keep myself steady, the cookies on the plate, the tea in the pot. They blurred before my eyes. What do you mean? I asked, though deep down I already knew. He shifted, tugging at his collar, the same nervous tick he'd had since childhood. We've planned something very specific, he said. Modern, minimalist, aesthetic. We want the guest list to reflect that. His words sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced them in the car on the way here. I laughed, a brittle sound I didn't mean to make. You don't want your mother in your wedding photos? His eyes met mine, brown eyes that once saw me as the center of his universe. Now they were cold, calculating. It's not about photos, he said. It's about presentation, with your condition, the scarf, the coughing. It might make people uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. That's what I was, now. Not his mother. Not the woman who gave him everything. Just an embarrassment. An inconvenience. And then she walked in. Kendra. She didn't knock. She didn't pause. She walked into my home like it belonged to her. Tall, elegant, her blonde hair falling in waves, makeup flawless despite the humid air. Her dress clung to her like it was made for her alone. She glanced around, her nose wrinkling ever so slightly. So this is the place, she said. Cozy, very authentic. Her words cut sharper than if she'd insulted me outright. Cozy, authentic. She meant poor. She meant beneath her. Tobias lit up when she entered, standing taller, his voice warmer. Kendra, this is my mother, he said, gesturing toward me as though I were an object, a piece of furniture that required explanation. Her ice blue eyes landed on me. She smiled, but it was thin, brittle, like paper stretched too tight. Nice to meet you, she said, though we'd met twice before. Both times she had looked straight through me. I stood in my own living room, wearing my best blouse, my pearl earrings, my son's love from years ago. I'd like to be there, I said softly. I'll sit in the back. I won't draw attention. I just want to see my son get married. Kendra's mask slipped. For a moment, her eyes darted, her smile faltered. Then she straightened, her words sharp. We've finalized the seating chart, the dress code, the entire flow. It's about the vibe. I looked to Tobias, waiting for him to stand up for me, to defend me, to be my boy again. He stared at the floor. He tried to soften it. We can FaceTime you in, he said like a consolation prize. You'll feel like you're there. I don't want to FaceTime, I whispered. I want to be in the room. Kendra laughed, brittle as glass. After the honeymoon, we can talk about better living arrangements, somewhere with care, peaceful, comfortable. She meant a nursing home. She means a nursing home, I said flatly. Tobias sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I'm trying to be respectful. Respectful. He said it like a curse. I studied him then. The jaw I used to kiss goodnight. The dimple in his cheek that showed when he concentrated. The hands that once reached for mine instinctively. Where had that boy gone? When had this man replaced him? I gave you everything, I whispered. Everything I had. Everything I was. And then he said it. The words that cut deeper than any illness. This is why Dad left you. The world went silent. My chest hollowed out. Michael, my husband, Tobias's father, the man who walked out one Saturday morning when Tobias was 7. A suitcase in his hand, an excuse about not being ready. I had stood at the window and watched him drive away, feeling like a photograph ripped in half. I never told Tobias the truth. I never told him his father left because love wasn't enough for him, because youth tempted him more than responsibility. I told Tobias softer lies. Daddy's tired. Daddy needs space. Daddy still loves you. I thought I was protecting him. And now, decades later, my son used that abandonment as a weapon against me. I sat down heavily in my recliner. My hands shook. For the first time since the diagnosis, I felt old. Truly old. Kendra glided to the door. We'll be in touch, she said. Tobias bent and kissed the top of my scarf. His lips didn't touch me. they touched fabric. "We love you, Mom," he said. Empty, hollow, performative. And then they were gone. The cookies sat untouched. The tea had gone cold. The silence swelled until it pressed against my skin. "Thank you," I whispered, "for showing me who you are." Something broke inside me, but something else hardened. That night, I went to my bedroom, pulled open the old filing cabinet at the back of my closet. Beneath tax returns and insurance papers was a folder labeled Final. Inside were deeds, bank statements, policies, proof of what I had built, quietly, secretly, over 3 decades. Tobias thought I had nothing. He thought I scraped by on cafeteria wages, a woman who pinched pennies and lived modestly. He never knew about the duplex I bought with Aunt Ruby's inheritance, how I spent weekends fixing pipes, painting walls, sanding floors, how I learned wiring from library books and burnt fingers, how one property turned into 2, then 3, how I invested in Sheila's beauty salon, took a quiet share, and watched it grow. I never bought new shoes. I clipped coupons. I darned my socks. But I built something. Slowly, quietly, always for him. My will named him sole beneficiary. Everything I had built was meant for him. I stared at his name until the letters blurred. I reached for the gold letter opener he had given me in college. Heavy, beautiful, my initials engraved on the handle. I had treasured it, used it for every important paper. Now I used it to slice through his name. Rip, rip, until the will was nothing but confetti across my bed. Each tear felt like shedding skin. The next morning I called Monique, my dearest friend, my attorney, my sister in all but blood. "I need to rewrite my will," I told her. "Is this about Tobias?" she asked. "He told me I would ruin his aesthetic," I said. "He told me my illness would make his guests uncomfortable. His fiancée suggested a nursing home, and when I told him I gave him everything, he said that's why his father left me." There was silence. Then Monique said, "Steady. I'll bring everything." At 2:00, she arrived with her leather briefcase. We sat at my dining table, the same table where Tobias once did homework, where I once taught him poker with pennies. "Who do you want as beneficiary?" Monique asked. "The Rose House," I said. The Rose House, a shelter for elderly women abandoned by their families. I had volunteered there for years, painting walls, serving meals, reading to women whose eyes had grown too tired, women discarded, forgotten, women like me. "They're me," I said, "and they will remember me when my own son does not." Monique nodded. She began drafting papers. "You don't want to leave him anything?" she asked gently. "I already gave him my whole life," I said. "That should have been enough." When the papers were done, I signed them with trembling hands. Tobias's name was gone. Rose House stood in its place. "I want to write him a letter," I told Monique. "Not now, later, at the wedding. Give it to him in front of everyone. Let him think he won. Let him smile for his photos, then hand him the truth." Monique looked at me, half admiration, half sorrow. "You want to make a scene?" "I'm not making a scene," I said. "I'm ending one." That night, I pulled the shoebox from beneath my bed. Inside were letters I had written for Tobias, for birthdays, his wedding day, the day he might become a father. Each letter a piece of my heart. I tore them in half, one by one, until the garbage was full of shredded love. My hands smelled like ink, my chest felt lighter. I washed my hands, looked at my reflection in the window, pale, scarved, but my eyes, they burned with fire. "I'm not done yet," I whispered, and I meant it. 4 days later, the invitation arrived. A thick envelope, heavy in my hand, like it carried judgment inside. Cream cardstock, gold lettering, the kind of invitation that cost more than I once spent on groceries in a week. The return address was Cousin Renee's. Of course, it wouldn't come from Tobias directly. Inside was a glossy photograph of Tobias and Kendra standing beneath a white archway, all angles and perfection, their smiles so bright they looked painted on. The script told me what I already expected: a vineyard outside Charleston, white roses, carefully designed elegance. And then, at the bottom, written small and smug, "Please sit in the designated family section and respect the couple's wishes for a peaceful celebration." Code for, "Sit down, shut up, don't ruin the pictures." I folded it neatly and set it on the counter beside my keys. I didn't need to deliberate. I would go. But not as they imagined me: quiet, grateful, invisible. I would go as myself. The morning of the wedding, I rose before dawn. The house was silent, the kind of silence that presses on your chest. I moved through my routine carefully, as if each motion mattered. I bathed, my hands soft on skin that bruised easily now. I dressed in my gray suit, the one I wore on Easter's. I wrapped my head in my favorite scarf, deep blue with silver threads that shimmered in the light, like stars woven into fabric. I pinned my mother's silver dove brooch to my lapel. 3 generations of women had worn it. Today, it felt like armor. In the mirror, I looked smaller than I used to, more fragile. But my eyes, they were alive. Alive with purpose. Alive with something Tobias could not take from me. At 10:30, Monique arrived. Always on time. She wore her navy suit, her briefcase in hand. Inside it, the manila envelope that carried everything. She didn't ask if I was sure. She knew I was. We drove mostly in silence, the road stretching out before us, the air between us heavy with what we both knew was coming. The vineyard was beautiful, I'll give them that. Rolling hills lined with vines, sunlight pouring down like blessing. White tents dotted the manicured lawn. String lights already glowed, though it was daylight. A jazz band played near the entrance, their notes floating like something rehearsed for months. Guests drifted about in pastels and pressed suits, champagne glasses glinting. It looked like a magazine spread, every detail curated. "Expensive," Monique murmured. "Not with his money," I replied quietly. She helped me across the grass, my shoes sinking slightly into the earth. A few guests glanced at me politely, then looked away. To them, I was just another old woman, a relative of someone else. They didn't know I was the mother of the groom. That suited me fine. I found my place in the designated family section, 3rd row, off to the side. Close enough to check a box, far enough back to erase me from photos. From there, I saw everything: the floral arch, the photographer prowling for angles, the guests arranging themselves like actors in a play. The ceremony began. Bridesmaids floated down the aisle. Then Kendra appeared, and the crowd gasped. Her dress shimmered, her hair glowed, her smile could have sold perfume. She moved like a queen approaching her throne. Tobias waited at the altar, tall and confident, his tuxedo sharp, his grin wide. Together, they looked like a painting of perfection. The officiant spoke about love, unity, honoring parents. Tobias nodded. His eyes never searched for mine. Even when parents were mentioned, his gaze stayed locked forward, as though I didn't exist. They spoke their vows, words about adventure and dreams. They slipped platinum rings onto each other's fingers. They kissed, the crowd erupted. The photographer snapped shot after shot. Champagne corks popped, music swelled, laughter rippled. Their curated happiness was complete. That's when Monique moved, calm, steady, as though delivering paperwork. She approached Tobias with the envelope. He frowned, confused, as she handed it to him. Then she gave a second, smaller envelope to Kendra. Without a word, she turned and walked back to me. Tobias opened the envelope, his fingers stiff. At first his face was blank, then confusion, then disbelief. His eyes darted across the pages. My new will, the deeds, the bank statements, the transfer of every asset to the Rose House. And finally, the letter. My letter, written in careful script. He read it once, twice. His hands began to shake. His mask slipped just for a moment, and I saw the boy he used to be, the boy who wanted so desperately to please me. Then panic set in. Kendra tore open her envelope. Inside was a single note. Kendra, if you married Tobias for money, you chose poorly. He has none. Not from me. He earned it. Her face flushed red. She looked at Tobias with fury. What the hell does this mean? She hissed, her voice carrying. Guests began to murmur. Phones lifted discreetly. She left me nothing, Tobias whispered, his voice hoarse. You told me she was dying, Kendra snapped. You said she'd leave everything to you. We built our life around that. She is dying, he said, desperation cracking his polished tone. But she gave it all away. His words faltered. She destroyed everything. The guests were staring now, whispers growing louder, their perfect day unraveling before their eyes. I'm not marrying a man who can't even control his own mother, Kendra spat. She pulled her hand from his grasp, her ring glittering in the sun. You embarrassed me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. How am I supposed to explain this? And then she turned, her dress dragging across the grass like a curtain closing on a play. Her bridesmaids scurried after her. Tobias stood frozen, papers shaking in his hand, surrounded by guests who now looked at him with pity or amusement. A cousin, older, stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. Son, he said quietly, that woman walked through hell to raise you. You should have put her in the front row. I didn't wait to see more. I left my scarf folded neatly on the chair where I'd sat, a blue splash against the white cushions. My farewell. My final word. I walked to Monique's car, climbed in slowly. The music still played behind us, but it was hollow now. Their curated wedding was over. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. The cookies I'd baked days before were still in the jar. I poured myself tea, hands steady, heart oddly calm. I had done what needed to be done. I had ended the story. Weeks passed. I spent more time at the Rose House. The women there welcomed me as if I were one of their own. Edna, with her sharp wit and trembling hands. Margaret, who told the same stories daily but laughed as if they were new. Gloria, whose children had abandoned her, who still hummed hymns while she folded laundry. I read to them, cooked for them, sat beside them in the garden we planted together. The roses bloomed that summer, red and white and pink. Gloria cried when she saw the first blossom. It feels alive again, she whispered. And she was right. The house was alive, and so was I. The money transformed Rose House quickly. New mattresses replaced the old. A broken heater was fixed before winter. The kitchen gleamed with new appliances. A small library was added, shelves filled with books. We painted the walls cheerful colors, hung quilts stitched by volunteers. For the first time in years, the women there felt seen. Sometimes, late at night, I sat by my window and thought of Tobias. I wondered if he stared at his wedding photos and saw the candid the photographer had captured. The moment his mask cracked. I wondered if he remembered the pearl buttons, the earrings, the cookies. I wondered if he regretted. Do I want him back? Yes. Hope is stubborn. If he knocked on my door tomorrow, I'd let him in. I'd pour him tea. I'd tell him I loved him. But I would not hand him everything again. That part of me is gone. 3 months later, the doctor called. The scans were clear. The treatment had worked better than anyone dared hope. I was going to live. Longer than I expected. Longer than Tobias expected. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I quietly sold the house, packed a suitcase, and boarded a plane. Spain, a small village by the coast, where the air smells like oranges and sea salt, where the sun paints the stones gold. My neighbors know me only as Ellie, the American widow with a garden of mint and basil and roses that bloom year-round. They don't know about Tobias. They don't know about the fortune I gave away. They just know me as a woman who bakes bread, tends her garden, and watches the sea. Back in Charleston, Rose House thrived. They renamed the main building Massey Hall. Donations poured in after my story spread. Granny got the last word, Mother knows best. Women across the world shared their own stories of being discarded, of being told they were a burden. My act had lit a flame. Tobias tried to contest the will, of course. Hired expensive lawyers. Claimed I wasn't of sound mind. But Monique had done her work well. Every signature was airtight. Every document legal. The court threw out his claim. He received one final letter from me, through Monique. I loved you with everything I had. You threw it away. I gave you 32 years, and you couldn't give me 3 hours. I would have given you the world, but you told me I was too ugly to be seen. Now you have nothing of mine but your name. Use it well, or don't. Goodbye. I don't know what became of Tobias and Kendra. Maybe they patched things up. Maybe they didn't. Maybe he still blames me. But it no longer matters. My story doesn't end with him. My story ends here, in Spain, by the sea. Roses blooming in my courtyard, sunlight painting my scarf silver. My body weaker, yes, but my spirit steel. I am not the woman my son thought he could erase. I am Lorraine Massey, mother, worker, builder, survivor. And I am not done yet.